We're going to jump into a brand new series today called Hope for the City. And as I kind of, teed up in the very beginning, this is really to nail down who we are as a church, to help you guys own the vision and mission of who we are. That way, you're not just trying to emulate who you think God has for us. We are living in step with one another, in step with God. And so as we walk through this, we're going to be going through some hard things. So just be ready. We're going to dig in a little bit. I don't know about you, but I try to write my life the way that I think it should go. I remember I was 22, so obviously I knew everything. And we decided, my wife and I started dating in high school. We decided, why not make a whole lot of life changes in a couple weeks? So we both graduated college, week one. We got married week 2, and then we started a new job week 3. So moved to a different town, started a new job. Why not do everything in a span of that, right? And I remember you have all these thoughts, ambitions, and ideas. Maybe you felt like this when you got married. You're like, I can't wait to get married. Everything's gonna be perfect, right? And you don't realize how hard it is to really make a marriage work. And you're blending two ideals. You're blending two styles. The things that you thought were cute just become annoying at times, You're like, oh, that was adorable. And now you're like, oh, that's horrible. And then on top of that, because we were poor, because, college kids, and at that house we had, I remember this. This was wild. Our house was so small. It was the only thing we could really afford. You couldn't close the door to the bathroom if you were using the bathroom. The bathroom was so small, you couldn't close the door because your legs would hit, and it's it's just wide open like that. It's really awkward when people come and visit. And, I think we ended up putting a curtain up, and still, you can't block certain sounds. I'm just saying. And, there are certain things like that I just remember going, holy cow, this life isn't what we thought, and you just keep trying to fill it with things that you think will make it better. Do you feel like that sometimes? Man, you are just living life. In fact, there's a difference between a life lived, and I think that's where a lot of us are, and then a life lived on purpose, and that's what we want to talk about today. There's a difference between living life and then living life on purpose. I think, though, life can be so tough and the grind can be so difficult that you just get into this routine of just checking boxes. And because you're just looking for something to make it better, you're just checking the next box that you think will make it better. That's really tough. Again, 22, right? You're just figuring life out, and it's a new job, and that was it was a good learning experience as a 22-year-old, but man, it was a tough job. It was the first and only place I'd ever been fired from, and was fired on my wife's birthday, which was awesome. Happy birthday. We have no money. We didn't have money anyways, and so that just made it worse, right? And it was crazy. And to sum it up, you're we hired someone that got fired. One, that was 20 years ago. I was young. But two, so complicated, right? Again, this was you're living life in ministry, and you are accomplishing the purpose you think God has put out. But I'll tell you, it was crazy. The reason I got fired from that job is what has pushed me to the person I am today. I remember having a meeting with the elders. They said that the church it was St. Petersburg, Florida. The church had moved from one area to another, and the pastor who hired me left, so new guy, and we didn't get along. That was a good chunk my fault. But the other side of it is we were picking kids up from the downtown area of St. Pete, and you can fill in the blanks of who those kids were. And they were loving it. The ministry had grown from 15 to over 40 in a short time, and kids were giving their lives to Jesus. And I remember sitting with the elders, and they say, "Hey, we don't want that type of kid here." And they were living life, but they weren't living life on purpose. They forgot who they were at one point. And that's the hard thing. You could still do the right things and fill your lives with the right things, and it still not go the right way. Right? A life lived, and this is the difference, is built around what happens to you. You become reactionary. This is where I was. This is probably where a lot of you have been, right? You kind of bounce from situation to situation because your life has been a reactionary statement to something, like something happens and you've got to fill in the gap. You've got to make the income to make it work for your family, right? That was a stark reality for me. It's like, yeah, like you're called to ministry, but you're also trying to provide a living for your family. And so you become reactionary in that, right? Or maybe like, you had a situation happen with, you and a spouse, or you and the person you're in a relationship with, and like you just become reactionary in that. Or maybe it was a situation at a job like mine, where you know the right things and you're doing the right things, but it's not aligned with who that organization is. Like, this is where we usually become, because the other side of it is a life lived on purpose is built around what you're building on. And what this means is this, like who you're building your life to be and who you're building your life on. This is a life on purpose. And this is the difference. This is what we're trying to create a church around, is let's stop living life in a reactionary mode and let's start living life on purpose. It's Stacy's story this morning, right? A life lived asks this question: how do I keep this life from falling apart? I know we've all been there. You're just trying to hold so tightly, and the tighter that you hold onto the life, the more it feels like it's falling apart, because there's no good thing that's going to make it best. Like you're just trying to plug and play, and the thing that didn't work, you're like, okay, I'll throw that aside, so I'm going to work to the next thing, and that didn't work, so you throw that aside. So you just get into this routine, and this is like the positive life. Like this is why, like my generation, the millennials, this is why we're abandoning this, because they're like, just live for you. There is no real truth. Your truth is the real truth. And we're like, that's crap. There is a real truth. Because if we're just living life how we feel, this is what becomes. And a life on purpose asks this question: what is strong enough to build my life on? This is the foundation question. If you've ever had a foundation issue with your house, you know this. Right? Like, you can have like a beautiful house, but if the foundation is bad on it, one, you're never going to get a loan for that house, but two, it's just going to fall apart at some point. This is the same thing. Like, you can have everything going well in your life, but at some point, if it's not built on the right thing, it's going to fall apart. Some of you have been there, where it's like life is cruising, and you're like, this is great, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just falls apart. You're like, what just happened, right? Feels like a whirlwind. This is usually the issue. And it builds around these two words, optimism and hope. Optimism is a wish. This is where the world lives right now. You're just hoping that the next thing, you're just grasping onto the next thing to fill your life, to hopefully make it a little bit better. Like right now, like people are hoping and wishing and optimistic that the not war, whatever it is right now, will end, so gas prices will go down. I've never been this happy in my life. I filled up my wife's car, because that's what I have to do, I guess, when I'm driving her car. And because she waits. She's like, hey, you want to go and we'll take the kids somewhere? I'm like, yeah. And I get in, she's like, oh yeah, I need gas. Can you pump? I'm like, yep, okay. So I'm filling the gas. I go to Kroger and I swipe my Kroger card, and it's like, you have $1 off. I'm like, I've never been so happy in my life. I've saved $16 today on gas, right? I was like, hallelujah. I can just go home. I've won today, right? Like this is that. You're like wishful and hopeful. I'm like, holy cow, I just won the lottery. I feel like it. Like this is what we're all optimistic about right now. This is hope. Hope is a pathway. Hope is a pathway to actually have a path to where you're trying to get to. This is what Jesus is preaching on. And what we're going to do throughout this entire series is we're going to be reading through the book of Peter, or 1 Peter. So if you want, read along with us. Like, it's a chapter a week, very easy. Not even a chapter a day. It's 5 total chapters, right? Like a chapter a week. And if you're like, I don't know if I have time for that, I don't know what to do for you at that point. Something needs to go off your schedule if you don't have time for one chapter a week. But, we're going to read it but here's the thing with Peter. If you know anything about Peter, and even if you don't, I'm going to fill in the gaps. Peter walked with Jesus for 3 years. So when Peter is talking to this church, and we're going to break all that down, he is going back to his moments with Jesus that these pathways were created. And so we're going to signal these back to moments that these probably had some light bulb moments with Peter. Optimism breaks because it just tells you to stay positive when things don't work out. Have you felt this? It's like, man, just stay positive. It's going to get better. And what happens if it doesn't? Life falls apart. And so at some point, positivity breaks down. But this is what hope does. Hope doesn't deny reality, it survives it. And what that means is this. Like, this is Stacy's story, right? Like, this is the moment where, like, the rubber literally meets the road, where you're like, how did I get through that? And the only thing you can look back to is Jesus. And you're like, because I wasn't just trying to stay positive, I was creating a pathway to the hope that I have through Jesus. See, under heavy stress, your mind desperately searches for an escape route. Like, so, I've got ADHD. I talk very openly about that. And there's moments where things just get a little wild and out of control. And this is how I can always know. It's like when I get sharp with my kids, because like that overwhelmed mind just gets sharp and lashes out. And so I felt that here recently because we had a ton of events happen, and I was getting sharp a couple days in a row with my kids, and I just sat there. We ended up going to watch Spider-Man, great movie, by the way. And I just sat there going like through the movie, watching it, but also thinking, because ADHD does all kinds of things at the same time. But I was like, man, why am I feeling this way? It's because I've just tried to find an escape route from all these emotions inside my mind. But let me just genuinely ask you a question. If you don't have hope in Jesus, and maybe you're a Jesus follower, maybe you're not, but like being a Jesus follower or not, that doesn't mean that your hope is reliant on God. Like if you don't have hope on Jesus, where do you escape to? You know the answer, right? Like that's why there's so many addictions. There's alcohol, porn, drugs, all the things. Like one of my addictions for a long time, this sounds funny, Robinhood. The trade stocks, because you get so excited, you're like, I make money, and then you don't because it's the stock exchange, right? And then you just try to escape that route, and that's why addictions are so heavy, because they become escape moments for us. This is what your brain is desperately trying to do. So if your head's to positivity, guess what? It's gonna falter and it's gonna collapse. But if your head's to hope, it gives you a true pathway. When we can't find a real way out, we grab onto quick fixes. That's the addictions. So if you're sitting there like, man, why can't I give this up? It's because your hope isn't in Jesus. It's in whatever you're addicted to. Like, we try to force temporary quick fixes to solve our deepest problems. So if you're not like dialing up underneath those problems to figure out what it is, you're never going to see it. And real hope doesn't fix your current situation. It gives you the strength to stand up to it. And that's what you need to hear. Like, this is not a quick fix. Like, following Jesus isn't a quick fix. In fact, following Jesus probably is the anti of that, because it's gonna force you to dig. It's gonna force you to just what she said was exactly right. Like, you're gonna face spiritual warfare and attacks and emotional strain that you've never experienced before. But at the end of it, like, hope stands in it and up to it and through it. And it's going to give you a foundation to really hold on to. Like, what happens, this is the question you got to ask, what happens when the thing you're building your life on gets tested? And that's where we're sitting through this whole series. So, that's the question. What happens when the thing that you're building your life on gets tested? Does it truly have the foundation to support what you want it to? Or is it going to collapse? We're going to start off in Mark chapter 5. Let me kind of set the table for you. So, like I said, we're going to put these back to stories with Jesus. And this one is going to be on the screen if you don't have your Bibles. But this one it's a crowd moment with Jesus. Jesus is sitting in the crowd, and people are just tagging on to him as much as they can. And there's a woman in particular that we're going to talk through. But I think, I can't prove this, right? But I think this is one of those moments that Peter looks back at when he's writing to this church. And what First Peter is, Peter's writing to a church that is just overwhelmed with stress and spiritual warfare, and they're just faltering because their foundation isn't in Jesus. So my guess is these are the moments that Peter is latching onto to be able to write these, because if you know anything about Peter's story, he was a mess. And that's the beauty, is even a mess like Peter can be used. So a mess like me, a mess like you, you're probably way better than I am, honestly, but he can use any of us. That's the beauty of it. So we're gonna push this story pretty quick, and then because the real meat is in 1 Peter. So Mark chapter 5, verse 24, and it kicks off like this. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. So anywhere Jesus went, there was a crowd. because he was doing crazy things. He was, he was healing people. He was meeting their needs. And like, I hear all the time, people are like, oh, we don't need to do events. Jesus kind of did that, right? Like, it was an event, but like, I would go check out someone that was doing like a cool healing thing, right? Like, if I really knew people, like, I'm skeptical. I'm a highly skeptical person. So when I'm like, they're like, walk, and the person walks, I'm like, they weren't really disabled. Like that, I'm a highly, but if I like knew the people and he's like spitting in mud and like, you can see, I'm like, that's awesome, right? Like, I would love to see this. So Jesus was attractional. He was bringing people in. And a woman in the crowd who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. We don't need to pour through that. You can fill in the blanks, right? But this was a chronic illness for her. Like, and we're going to look through this. She had filled her life with quick fixes that never worked. Probably like a lot of us, right? She had suffered a good bit from many doctors and over the years had spent everything she had to pay them. So my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer on my 21st birthday. We've talked about that. 6 months prior to that, my dad was going to the doctor constantly because he couldn't swallow. I remember Thanksgiving. We were all eating, and he could not eat Thanksgiving. He had been to several doctors. They didn't scope far enough to find the cancer. Like, I know what this looks like. I couldn't imagine 12 years of this. Like, some of you have been dealing with some things for a long time. And there's probably a feeling of like, does God hear me? Does he care? The answer is yes. But there's also a reason why we go through suffering. That's not today. That is coming, right? But she had suffered a great deal. She'd spent her money, her life savings on this, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten what? Worse. Like, that's a lot of our lives. We try to quick fix our way out of things, and a lot of times it gets worse. It doesn't get better. Why? Because the quick fix isn't the issue. It's everything underneath that we're trying to supplement for, right? What we chase, this is the sticky statement today, what we chase will eventually be what we face. If you're chasing a quick fix in your life, you're going to have to face that quick fix in your life at some point. If you're chasing things to fill the gaps for you, you're going to have to face it at some point. If you're chasing everything to fill the gaps of what that hope and what Jesus Christ should be filling, you're going to face it at some point. But if you're filling it with Jesus, that's something worth facing. Hold that, right? She had heard about Jesus. So she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. I love this. Like, she's a little skeptical, probably like any of us that come into church for the first time, you're a little skeptical. What am I going to think? What am I going to feel? Like, is this actually going to work? I've tried so many things. So she kind of sneaks in incognito to touch his robes, for she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. It doesn't say this, but my interpretation of this is this: what do I have to lose? And let me just tell you, like, it doesn't really matter how you come to Jesus. Some of us came desperate. Some of us came hopeful. And some of us came because we've tried everything else and nothing else has worked. That's okay. And if you're in that place and you feel hopeless, you got a God that loves you. The problem isn't just what we're chasing. The problem is what we're expecting it to give us. So, like, I just want to be very clear. Like, if you're going after something, there are good things to go after. But if you're expecting those things to fix everything in your life, they were never meant to. The better paying job isn't going to fix everything. It might temporarily fix some things, but ultimately it's not going to fix what you're searching for. Like, that relationship isn't going to fix everything. It might help in the middle of it, but it's not going to ultimately fix it. Like, whatever you're chasing, have the right expectation out of it. And if you're chasing Jesus, like, having the right expectation for Jesus, that's worth it. Going on, immediately. I love this, like, not sometime later, not at some point, but immediately the bleeding stopped. And this is my favorite part. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that feels like, but I would, like, could you imagine for 12 years? I was laughing with my daughter. So with ADHD, and she's got severe ADHD because I have severe ADHD, your mind is constantly racing. Like, you like, I didn't know this for a long time. Like, when I'm reading a book, I'm reading it in my head, and like there's voices in my head reading it, and like that's not normal, I guess. But like voices are constantly in my head. And so the moment I took the medicine, I was like, oh my gosh, it's quiet. I was like, that's crazy. I've never felt like it. And it took a while to get used to it. I don't know if it was something like that, but like that's what, like there's something that transformed her life immediately. And I'm not saying that Jesus will work like that all the time for everyone, but I'm going to tell you, he's going to start healing things that there are moments that you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, holy cow, I just feel like a different person. Because he's just starting to work through parts of your life that you've been holding on for so long. And like, she'd been healed of her terrible condition. Like, if you remember backing up, like, she had tried everything. She had tried doctors. She probably, like, I don't know what they had tried, but I'm sure there were some kind of surgeries involved in this. And she'd gotten worse. Like, she had not lost hope, but eventually lost hope. She had lost any positivity that anything was going to change in her life. Because there were quick fixes. Immediately, once she experienced Jesus, everything changed. Jesus, I love this, Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone from him. I don't know, again, what that looks like or feels like because I'm not Jesus, but that's got to be wild for him to know immediately that it came out. So he turned around to the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? Could you imagine just masses of people? He's like, who's touched me? And this is the disciples' reaction, right? His disciples looked at Jesus like he was a crazy guy. They were like, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, who touched me? Jesus, like, are you crazy? Look at all these people. And that's what he says. But he kept on looking. This is what I love about our God. He's always going to be looking for you. Like, you're never too far from God. You're never too distant from him. You've never gone through too much to be rejected. He's always going to be looking. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees because she realized what had happened and who she was in front of, and told him what had been done. And this is Jesus' reaction. I love it. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Now go in peace. Your suffering is over. Listen, this is a different kind of suffering. There was physical healing, but there was a spiritual healing too. And it's not to say that you're not going to go through things. You will. I mean, this isn't a magic pill, a magic solution. But this is Jesus transforming everything from the inside out in your life. It's not a quick fix. Because the things that we've allowed for our lives to be built on, the narratives that we've created for ourselves, the things that we've positioned ourselves with, those have to be torn down. That hurts. Like, have you ever had to go back and like reforecast narratives in your life? It's really tough. Have you ever had to undo sinful moments in your life? It's really difficult. Have you ever had to deconstruct things to a place where you're like filling your life with Jesus and not with everything else? Like, the suffering of the moment was over, but like he also was creating a spiritual healing with her too. And so like this is everything that's pushing now to Peter. Could you imagine Peter? Like, there are moments that I look at Peter and I'm like, man, he's incredible. Like the walking on water. And then there's moments like I'm like, he's an idiot. And it's really easy to look back. I'm sure if someone had like a blueprint in my life, they'd be like, oh, what a dummy. And but I look at those moments and that gives me so much hope, because the moments that I miss it, like, it's okay. Because like he walks on water and he fails, and then Jesus picks him up. And he's still rewriting those narratives for Peter to a point where now Peter's talking to everyone else. See, what we chase will eventually be what we face. And so Peter started rewriting his narrative to be chasing after Jesus. And you don't know what you're actually relying on until it's the only thing left. See, I think that's what happened to Peter. I think it's what happened to this woman. I think it's what Peter's trying to help illustrate to the church. Like, Peter was sitting there and he had betrayed Jesus and he had nothing left. And then Jesus meets him in his despair. This woman had tried everything. She had nothing left. And Jesus met her in that moment. Like, where has Jesus met you in those moments where you're sitting there going, I've got that's how Houston is here today. Nothing left. The only thing to rely on is Jesus. And I just keep looking at him, I'm like, look what God has done. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6. This is what he starts writing to the church. He says, so be truly glad that there is wonderful joy ahead, even though you must do what? Endure many trials for a little while. Like, be excited that you're going to suffer a little bit for the joy that's coming. Like, I think we want to escape the suffering because we're afraid of the suffering, but I'm going to tell you, embrace the suffering. Because the suffering is what's going to get you to the ultimate joy. Like, again, look at Houston. Like, suffering. Like, 15 years of suffering to get to a place where it was moldable to a place that God is now moving in such a way, man. Like, I'm telling you, every time people talk to us, I'm like, only Jesus. A story, only Jesus, right? Peter doesn't stop there. He goes on a little further and he says this, these trials will show that your faith is genuine, that it is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, that your faith is far more precious than mere gold, that you are far more precious than gold to Jesus. Like, there's beauty in that. So why do we have hope? Because we have a God that displays it through the cross, through the redemption of what that is. So when we say hope for everyone, that's what we mean. So, like, real hope, and to find hope, we have to find it in the small moments in order to build hope for the big moments. Like, these are the things that you do to build your faith. It's what we've seen, again, in Houston. It's what I've seen in my own life. It's hopefully what you've seen in your life where you give just a little bit of hope to Jesus, and you're like, all right, let's see what you do here. And you're like, holy cow, he did a lot. I sent a text to our elders. We're praying all the way through, in our finance team, we're praying all the way through August for some very specific things. And we sent a text. It was Ephesians 3:20, what we read today. And, we are just trusting God to do far more than we could ever imagine or hope for. Why? Because we've seen him show up. So here's the question. Is what you're chasing enough to carry you? Is it? I'm not going to answer that for you. It's yours. So as we talk through this series and talk through what hope looks like, I just want you to do a self-evaluation of your life. Is what your life is built on strong enough to carry you? See, hope is not found in getting everything that we want. Hope is found in the one who holds everything we need. Like, that's the difference. Like, God's not a magical genie, because we'd be a mess if he was. Because what we want is not what we need. Because what we need is hope. What we need is a foundation. And ultimately, what this is hope for everyone. So when we say hope for everyone, that's what we mean. To have a sustainability, a foundation that's strong enough to carry. It's Stacy's story. I know it's a lot of your stories. It's what we want to bring, not just to these four walls, but when we say hope for the city, 90,000 people in Houston County that don't know Jesus. 90,000. 90,000 that are chasing something that is not this. That their foundation is just crumbling. And they're just sitting there going, what can I put my hope in? You've got the answer. Hope for the city, hope for everyone. God, we just so grateful, God, that we have moments like this that we can just praise you, even in the storm. And God, I pray that those of us who are just chasing things, like we all are, God. God, I pray that we're not chasing foundations that are just going to fall apart. God, I pray that we're chasing things that are going to last forever. God, I'm grateful for moments like today that we get to celebrate Stacy's story. God, I'm grateful for the stories that you have just shown up time and time again over. And God, I pray that this is the beginning of revival. Not just in our church, God, but in this community. God, that you just continue to start changing people from the inside out. God, that you bring hope for everyone. We give all these things to you. In your name we pray. Amen.